This is Walter Bosley, and I'll be reading a selection from The Individual and the Nature of Mass Events by Jane Roberts. Your world and everything in it exists first in the imagination. You have been taught to focus all of your attention upon physical events so that they carry the authenticity of reality for you. Thoughts, feelings, or beliefs appear to be secondary, subjective, or somehow not real, and they seem to rise in response to an already established field of physical data. You usually think, for example, that your feelings about a given event are primarily reactions to the event itself. It seldom occurs to you that the feelings themselves might be primary, and that the particular event was somehow a response to your emotions rather than the other way around. The all-important matter of your focus is largely responsible for your interpretation of any event. For an exercise, imagine for a while that the subjective world of your thoughts, feelings, inner images, and fantasies represent the rockbed reality from which individual physical events emerge. Look at the world for a change from the inside out, so to speak. Imagine that physical experience is somehow the materialization of your own subjective reality. Forget what you have learned about reactions and stimuli. Ignore for a time everything you have believed and see your thoughts as the real events. Try to view normal physical occurrences as the concrete physical reactions in space and time to your own feelings and beliefs. For indeed, your subjective world causes your physical experience. In titling this chapter, I use the word mechanics because mechanisms suggest smooth technological workings. While the world is not a machine, its inner workings are such that no technology could ever copy them. This involves a natural mechanics in which the inner dimensions of consciousness everywhere emerge to form a materialized, cohesive physical existence. Again, your interpretations of identity teach you to focus awareness in such a way that you cannot follow the strands of consciousness that connect you with all portions of nature. In a way, the world is like a multi-dimensional exotic plant growing in space and time. Each thought, dream, imaginative encounter, hope, or fear growing naturally into its own bloom. A plant of incredible variety, never for a moment the same, in which each smallest root, leaf, stem, or flower has a part to play and is connected with the whole. Even those of you who intellectually agree that you form your own reality find it difficult to accept emotionally in certain areas. You are, of course, literally hypnotized into believing that your feelings arise in response to events. Your feelings, however, cause the events you perceive. Secondarily, you do, of course, then react to those events. You have been taught that your feelings must necessarily be tied to specific physical happenings. You may be sad because a relative has died, for example, or because you have lost a job, or because you have been rebuffed by a lover, or for any number of other accepted reasons. You are told that your feelings must be in response to events that are happening, or have happened. Often, of course, your feelings happen ahead of time, because those feelings are the initial realities from which events flow. A relative might be ready to die, though no exterior sign has been given. The relative's feelings might well be mixed, containing portions of relief and sadness, which you might then perceive, but the primary events are subjective. It is somewhat of a psychological trick in your day and age to come to the realization that you do in fact form your experience and your world, simply because the weight of evidence seems to be so loaded at the other end because of your habits of perception. The realization is like one that comes at one time or another to many people in the dream state, when suddenly they awaken while still in the dream, realizing first of all that they are dreaming, and secondarily that they are themselves creating the experience drama. To understand that you create your own reality requires that same kind of awakening from the normal wake state, at least for many people. Some, of course, have this knack more than others. The realization itself does indeed change the rules of the game, as far as you are concerned, to a rather considerable degree. There are reasons why I am mentioning this now rather than in earlier books. Indeed, our books follow their own rhythms, and this one is, in a way, a further elaboration upon the nature of personal reality. As long as you believe that either good events or bad ones are meted out by a personified God as the reward or punishment for your actions, or on the other hand, that events are largely meaningless, chaotic, subjective knots in the tangled web of an accidental Darwinian world, then you cannot consciously understand your own creativity or play the role in the universe that you are capable of playing as individuals or as a species. You will instead live in a world where events happen to you, in which you must do sacrifice to the gods of one kind or another, or see yourselves as victims of an uncaring nature. While still preserving the integrity of physical events as you understand them, you must alter the focus of your attention to some extent so that you begin to perceive the connections between your subjective reality at any given time and those events that you perceive at any given time. You are the initiator of those events. This recognition does indeed involve a new performance on the part of your own consciousness, a mental and imaginative leap that gives you control and direction over achievements that you have always performed, though without your conscious awareness. Early man had such an identification of subjective and objective realities. As a species, however, you have developed what can almost be called a secondary nature, a world of technology in which you also now have your existence, and complicated social structures have emerged from it. To develop that kind of structure necessitated a division between subjective and objective worlds. Now, however, it is highly important that you realize your position and accomplish the manipulation of consciousness that will allow you to take true conscious responsibility for your actions and your experience. You can come awake from your normal waking state, and that is the natural next step for consciousness to follow, one for which your biology has already equipped you. Indeed, each person does attain that recognition now and then. It brings triumphs and challenges as well. In those areas of life where you are satisfied, give yourselves credit. And in those areas where you are not, remind yourselves that you are involved in a learning process. You are daring enough to accept the responsibility for your actions. Let us look more clearly, however, at the ways in which your private world causes your daily experience and how it merges with the experience of others. This is Walter Bosley, and I've just read a selection from The Individual and the Nature of Mass Events by Jane Roberts.